I've been to DC probably, I don't know how many times, many times. And every time I come here, it's always an enjoyable experience. It's always something to learn, something to interact with. It's just something beautiful about this city. And coming here to share with you at the Omani Embassy, at the Omani Cultural Centers, my personal experience and my personal journey with mental health means a lot to me. We don't have any hesitation talking about our broken arm, our difficulty with vision or hearing, our diabetes, high blood pressure. But we really truly suffer and are reluctant to share the stories associated with our emotions and our broken hearts, our sadness, our depression, our anxiety. I'm here to tell you that we as a society, not only as a society here in America, across the world, we need to start facing the reality that physical health and mental health are intertwined. And how we feel ourselves on a daily basis is not only a function of how we feel in our back or in our knees, but also in our soul, in our mind. So what I did over many years of having taken care of thousands of patients and having interacted with many families, being a parent, all of that, I've developed what I called the 5 pillars of resilience. What I really mean by that is that we work very hard to build the strength that we need so we can lift things, so we can maintain our balance, so we can deal with the physical challenges of healthcare that we may be encountering, but we don't build the emotional resilience that we need to deal with the psychological challenges that we all are going to face in our lives. So I'm going to ask you this question here. What is all of these emotions that we're looking at really have in common? Disappointment, failure, loss, job, death, financial, hurt, sadness, and trauma. What do they have all in common? They are extremely common. And they happen to any one of us at any time. They are very common, and they will happen to any one of us. There's no vaccine to prevent such occurrence other than addressing our response to them through emotional resilience. Emotional resilience is not a single injection. It's not something that you go and you're done with. It's something that you build, you practice, and it's a lifelong process. Life journey may appear easy and happy for some as they show on their social media and in the way they present themselves. Very common, Facebook, nobody's gonna face a picture of him and their spouse fighting. They're always gonna be holding hands, and they're always gonna be surrounded by their kids who are very happy, but not gonna tell you about that one kid who has addiction issue, and the other person who's depressed, and the third person who's just separated from them. You see that one picture of them, and you assume that they're happy, and sometimes you feel bad about yourself for not being in their shoes. However, for the absolute majority of people, often including them, life is full of challenges. These 5 tools that I will be discussing with you are essential to build the emotional strength and resilience to face life challenges with hope and resolve. Believe, trust, self-compassion, inspire, and finally move. And that's the part that my foundation is really centered around: movement. What is believe? Before I go there, I just want to tell you that there are factors that impact our emotional resilience and our difficulties in trying to learn those skills and adopt them. Number one is age. It seems like younger people are more capable of handling those things than older people. gender, it appears women tends to be able to deal with the emotional difficulties somewhat difficult in a different approach than men do. Genetics are important, but probably not that important. Self-esteem is very important. But I really have to bring something very important of what impacts our emotional reaction to certain things and how we deal with them is actually our social environment and socioeconomic culture and education. It's been shown over and over again that people who are poverty, people who have who are socially economically disadvantaged, they have tremendous difficulties dealing with the emotional challenges that they face. In addition to the fact that they also have challenges dealing with their physical issues that they have to challenge, that they're challenging. In fact, there's a lot of studies to support the fact that the way they deal with their physical issues often supersede those of their emotional, because the emotional sort of gets pushed to the side. They're simply trying to survive day-to-day life, but in the process, what they're feeling is impacting their body. They're impacting their diabetes, impacting their high blood pressure. So there's a vicious circle associated in those cultures. You know, I know you live in New Zealand and you've seen what New Zealand natives do, Fatma, and I know that I've seen it in the African American communities, Hispanic communities. Well, what is believe? Believe in the fact that everything in life will ever be changing. And every uncomfortable or bad situation can be and is an opportunity to change. It's very easier said than done. But we often face difficulties by the sense, oh, the world's going to come to an end. Every time I face challenges, whether it's in business and personal life, I always see it as an opportunity to learn something and do something different. Trust. Trust in your strength and ability to overcome as you unlock those inner power. I want to tell you something extremely important. When you read through those 5 core elements of emotional resistance, I want you to remember that you practice them is one thing, but you absolutely have to teach them to your children. Because kids who are armed with the ability to have that emotional strength and emotional resilience to deal with the challenges is going to stop them from hurting themselves. It's going to stop them from pursuing drugs or alcohol or so many other things that can disturb their lives. So remember that those 5 core components of emotional resilience are important to you as an adult, but please remember that they're extremely essential for children and they ought to be taught to children. Self-compassion. I am the guiltiest person on the face of the earth when it comes to self-compassion, because I always blame myself for everything when things go wrong. And we often do, and we all do that. Tend to go back, oh, screwed up. Well, self-compassion triggers self-care and hence self-acceptance, creating healthier relationship with ourselves and others. I was at the run up in how we're in the midst of the 550-50. In fact, Saturday I do the Virginia run. Welcome to join me. But I saw this young lady in Hawaii who came to me and she had an Arabic writing on her shoulder. And I said, oh, this is Arabic. She said, yeah, I know it's Arabic. My dad is Egyptian. I said, what does it say? Can I see it? She said, learn how to love yourself. تعلم كيف تحب حالك. You know, I was absolutely shocked because this is never something my mother ever taught me. This is something my mother always told me that if anything goes wrong, it's because of you. You are responsible for what? You're responsible for how your mother feels, how your brother feels, how your neighbors feel. It seems like it was always reflecting on you rather than, really thinking about yourself and loving yourself. In our Arabic culture, it is almost like to love yourself is like you're selfish. And that's not really what it is. It's not about being selfish. It's about that if you don't love yourself, you don't have much to give in form of love and compassion. So the first person you want to tap is yourself. Adel, you screwed up, but you still did a good job at the other thing, and everything's okay. Well, the word compassion means suffer with, not judge or criticize. And I think we have a tendency to judge and criticize ourselves a great deal, and really, perfection does not exist. So we must be kind and understanding to ourselves when confronted with personal failure, because we always want it the best, but we always think that but really perfection doesn't really exist. I listened to really a lot of I listened to Warren Buffett one time speaking about something, and someone told him, he said, you seem to always call the right shot. He said, no, I don't always make the right call. I've made a heck of a lot of wrong calls. But that's Warren Buffett talking, who is worth hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars. So perfection doesn't exist. Inspire. And I love this one, because be the hero of your own story. Not only by surviving it, but by overcoming and rising to the challenge. That is how you inspire others and be inspired. And the best thing that you can teach your kids is to inspire them. And by inspiring yourself. Well, move. I come to what I strongly believe in, and I will spend a little bit more time on move, and I'm going to lead from that into my own personal journey with move and activity, and then to the foundation and the 5-50-50. What is movement? I believe that movement is medicine for the body, mind, and soul. It unleashes an inner sense of physical and emotional well-being and delivers happiness. I can't tell you how many people tell me, why do you keep running? What do you get out of it? And they said, do you always like it? Do you always enjoy it? I don't. Do you always want to do it? I don't. But you know what? After I'm done with it, I feel great. And I can't tell you how many times I would get out of bed in the morning and I'm really ready to get to my cup of coffee and then read the updated news and not do my run. Like saying, I'm going to find a reason why not to go out there for a run. And then I talk myself into it, get my running shoes on and go. And when I come back, I'm so invigorated and ready to go for the day, and and everything is okay. That doesn't happen very often, thankfully, in my case, but I know in a lot of people who are not accustomed to regular exercise, they face those challenges. So it makes a difference. Why move? Physical activity has immediate effects on mood, focus, and reaction time that could last for up to 2 hours after physical activity. That is in part due to its effects on hormones such as increase in dopamine level, serotonin, and norepinephrine in the circulation, which in turn goes to the brain. Regular exercise, especially aerobic exercise, has a long-term effect on the brain anatomy, physiology, and function. In fact, the brain size increases with regular physical exercise. It's been shown in humans as well as in animals that if you exercise regularly, the brain size grows. And certain components in certain of the brain, like the hippocampus and amygdala, which are the centers of our emotions and ability to concentrate, is actually grow with physical activity. Brain anatomy increases in the size of the hippocampus, and adding new brain cells to the prefrontal cortex, and that's where our memory is, hence improving memory and cognitive skills. Well, I just recently gave a podcast to Fit Kids, which is an organization that supports physical activity in children, and I said, I want you all to think of exercise as Miracle-Gro to your brain. So whenever you want your garden to blossom, you add a little Miracle-Gro to it. So, but that's exactly what happens to your brain when you're engaged in regular physical activity. I could share with you an interesting paper, a study that came out of the University of Wisconsin, which is 50 miles west of where I live, where they took two groups of individuals who have cognitive dysfunction, and they took one group, and these are people aged 65 and older, 65 to 80, and they exercised one group, and the other group they did not exercise, and that was simply 160 minutes of aerobic activity per week. And they found that they were doing serial cognitive testing of them, and they found that after 2 years, well, before 2 years, as they were monitoring it, they noticed that the cognitive function of the people who are exercising are improving and they're not declining. Whereas it was declining in the other group, they halted the study. They felt it was unfair to deprive those people who are losing cognitive function from exercise. They said, wait a minute, we can't do this. They called the study off, and then so that's just a small example of how regular exercise provides protective effects on the brain, and that is extremely important. Protection from the degenerative disorders such as Alzheimer's disease and dementia. Dementia is on in this country. We have close to 1 million people. I mean, this is something that is, I know Kathy, my partner's mother, just recently died of dementia. And it's happening at younger and younger people in this country. And I truly believe that some of that has to do with, in addition to many other factors, aging is one of them, but of course, exposure to alcohol is a big one, in addition to inactivity. Inactivity is a huge factor that contributes to Alzheimer's dementia. Is like, so that's another term that I've used, is that exercise is like having a supercharged 401k for the brain. What amazes me is that so many people are so anxious about putting money aside for their retirement, but they don't invest time in regular self-care. Because ultimately, they come to retirements and they're spending it between doctors' offices and not really utilizing the money that they saved in the 401k to really enjoy life. Well, this is some graphic demonstration of what exercise does to our brain. You can see before and after exercise. This is looking at the brain structure. The size of the brain increases. This is a complicated slide, and I really don't intend to put you through the all biochemical understanding of what's happening here, but I don't know, can you see my cursor on the screen? Yeah, you can. So when skeletal muscle contracts, magical things happen. I mean magical things happen. Enormous number of hormones are released and compound. Some of them goes directly to the neurons in your brain, and some of them are metabolized by the liver and produces factors like the FGF21, which is the growth factor, and then here cathepsin and some of the other agents that activate brain-derived nerve factors that are not only activating the growth of brain cells, but also their ability to interact with each other. And as a result, you have what I call neurogenesis. So there's almost like a new brain is actually happening there. One thing that's very important, which is we have understood in the past, is that regular physical activity not only impact the brain growth and connectivity of the neurons, but also the vascularity of the brain. So there's angiogenesis. So you're bringing in more blood supply to the brain. And this is another way of demonstrating what I talked to you about earlier. Well, it comes down to this statement, and I've said these in many conferences in the past, and I know a lot of people call me, I'm Dr. Emotions equal motions. That is, I am Dr. Emotions equal emotions, because emotions do equal emotions. How we feel has a lot to do with what what we're doing every day in our life. If we're sitting down watching the tube, if we're inactive, if we're living a life of sedentary life, we are going to feel depressed. We are going to be unhappy. We are going to feel sorry for ourselves, especially when it comes to the point where we can't walk to the grocery store, or we have to take a car, or we have to ask somebody for help. Well, emotions equal emotions. And there's been actually studies done. I know Nike Corporation has been one of the leading companies in the United States in terms of encouraging their staff and their employees to exercise on a regular basis. In fact, the Nike corporations give them a break time away from their work to go out and work out, either through a gym or outside the buildings, and they always seem to have focus on creating that atmosphere. Clearly, they sell running shoes and clothes, but other companies, like some of the big corporations, some of the tech corporations, Microsoft and Google and all the others, seem to actually have understood this and brought it on board. Well, what are the physical benefits of exercise? There's a lot of them. And I always, about 20 years ago, I gave a talk titled Exercise, the Ultimate Pill. And I said, if there is a pill that can do all those things that you're looking at, would you take it? And everybody said, oh yeah, I'll take it. Would you pay $100 a day for? Oh, I'll pay whatever it takes. Well, maintains healthy weight and decreases the risk of obesity and inflammatory disease. That's something new that we didn't know before. And if I was standing here in front of you 5 years ago, I would not have been able to tell you that now we know that obesity is a disease. And it's an inflammatory disease. It causes inflammation in your joints, inflammation that promotes the development of a lot of inflammatory illnesses and diseases. Now there's a compound called adenopectin. In fact, now we can actually measure adenopectin in the blood. And it turns out that adenopectin as a protector for fatty cells, and the lower levels indicate the fact that it's underutilized, and that's what happens in obesity, and that's why you see inflammation. The test is not yet approved by the FDA, but I think pretty soon you'll be seeing people ordering serum adenopectin level. Decreases the risk of diabetes. 50% of the cause of end-stage renal disease in this country today is diabetes. When I started my clinical practice back in the late 80s, it used to be 30%, 25%. Cardiovascular diseases, early and sudden death, cardiovascular, coronary artery disease, hypertension, decreases the risk of cancer, breast, GI, prostate, decreases osteoporosis risk, reduces the risk of fractures, improves sex life. Physically active men and women are 3 times more likely to engage in regular sexual activities that are more enjoyable. Decrease the risk of degenerative neuromuscular disorders. All of that is due to exercise. What about the psychological benefit of exercise? It improves depression, anxiety, panic disorders, which is something I suffered from, and I'll share with you my story. PTSD, Alzheimer's disease, ADD and ADHD. We see that in children, and it reduces the risk of suicide. Here I have a few slides to share with you. I know I am moving a little fast. If I am, please, if anybody would like to have any questions, please go ahead and interject here. But really, regular physical exercise seemed to improve the remission rate in the treatment of depression. And this was done in patients who are already receiving therapy, drug therapy. But there's also been shown that if you have individuals who are taking medication for depression and put them in a regular physical exercise, sometimes they may be able to get them off the medications. In fact, when you look at the way drug affects depression and exercise affects depression, if you look at parallel studies of two, you can see that they're almost equally as benefits. In fact, regular exercise is a little bit better in terms of overall improving depression and sustaining it as someone who stays on a regular basis involved in it. Exercise and cognitive impairment, I shared that study with you. This is exercise and dementia. Again, people who regularly exercise have much less risk of developing dementia. Now, this is a fascinating study. This study is old, but it has been repeated in a number of subsequent studies looking at what we call the telomere. The chromosomes that you have in your body have two ends. Every cell, of course, have a bunch of chromosomes, and then and the nuclei, and there are two ends to the chromosomes, and those two ends are fairly unstable, and there's an enzyme called telomere that can actually involve in degrading them and destabilizing them, and that's how the aging process actually turned out to be. And it turned out that physical activities improve the it decreases the activity of the enzyme that contributes to the degradation of the DNA ends. So as a result of that, you have a more stable chromosomes. As a result, the aging process can actually be, if there's one thing you could do to impact your aging, whether it is your ability to do things, your skin, your dementia, your brain, is exercise. And this particular study clearly demonstrates that there are enzymatic changes that were happening in the circulations that are impacting chromosomal function, and hence that of vascular supply to your brain. Now, this is an interesting study looking at how exercise increases cortisol level. This was done in Lebanon on the Syrian refugees, children, and they looked at their cortisol level, and they found that the higher the cortisol level in their head, the higher the rate of PTSD and trauma in children, both in male and female. Well, what are some of the other things that can benefit mental health other than physical activity? Well, nature walk, blue therapy. People talk about ocean, lake, blue sky. It's always a good thing to be out there in the ocean. Personally, I mean, every time I look at water, I love it. It gives me a sense of comfort and relief. Watching sunset for me is tremendously rewarding and gives me a lot of happiness and joy. I can't tell you how many times I've dragged people around to say, let's get up and see the sunrise, or let's go watch the sunset. Because all of those natural events that happens every day in our life, if we don't see them and enjoy them and interact with them, we're missing something. Birding, I love birds. I always call birds are nature in action, beautiful nature in action. I mean, they're gorgeous. They sound wonderful. I mean, this morning we were eating at a restaurant, and we got out of the restaurant, and I heard a house finch singing. And it's like, where's he? I knew him, he's there. And then I saw him sitting out there, and then the female came in. And that feeling really gives you a sense of connection with nature, because you identify, kind of like you heard your grandmother talking. Well, that's that bird talking to you, and the singing in a way. Music therapy, there's a lot of talk about music therapy and how that works. And then art therapy. In fact, in a number of a project that I'm involved with, my foundation involved with refugees in Turkey and Greece and in Lebanon. We do have art therapy as part of that, to really more like divert their attention from the suffering to something that's more creative and interactive. Well, here I am. I was born in Syria to a middle-class family. Experienced anxiety since early childhood, separation anxiety. I remember that when my mother would take me to school and then drop me at the front door, I cry, and I always wanted to come back and hold and be with her. I had that tremendous separation anxiety. My father died when I was 12, And just before I turned 13, I experienced chest discomfort and palpitation as a teenager. I can't tell you how many times I had EKGs when I was 14, 15 years old. I experienced many, what I now realize as panic attacks. I did not know back then that there were panic attacks. I started running when I was 26, when I was doing actually probably more like 25, when I was doing my fellowship in nephrology in Virginia. I got married at age 32, had 4 kids, started a new business. I had a full-blown panic attack centered around my heart and my chest when I was 40. I failed many medications. Alprazolam put me to sleep. SSRI caused me tremendous insomnia and fatigue. I couldn't take them. And I decided, well, to up my game was running. Because the focus of my panic attack was centered around my heart and my chest, and the fact that I just had a cardiac cath. In fact, I had 3 of them. They were negative. I decided, well, I'm going to up my game, and I'm going to start running more, because that's the way I would force myself to I'm doing a stress test every day. I couldn't have a heart problem. So it gave me that self-assurance, yet yes, my heart is fine. So I started doing more marathons, and it's like, I think as you have just mentioned, by the time I turned 70, I ran 25,000 miles. Estimated, because I run about 300 to 400 miles. Sometimes, a few years in my life, I run 1,000 miles a year. So really, running has really confirmed me on a regular basis that your heart is okay and you're fine. And I know whenever I am in a bad mood, I say, okay, I better go out for a run. And my loved one would say, I think you should go out for a run. I think you're in a bad mood today. And I come back and I'm totally fine. So I always am proud to say this. Running has really saved my life. I think most of us look at this and say, well, this is crazy. It's not crazy. And I think that many of us look at experiences and situations that we have faced in our lives, and we say, oh, that situation saved my life. But running saved my life day after day after day after day after day. And the reality is that I'm here to tell you it doesn't have to be what I do. It could be anything you choose to do that involves challenges, activity, making yourself do it. Get out there. Face the reality. Face those challenges. It's okay. They're not going to be all happy. They're not going to be all easy. But ultimately, it will make a difference if it already has made a difference in your life. So that's one of the main reasons why I think that it's not only important for us to focus on that, also to encourage our younger generations to talk about that. I've talked to many teachers, many physical education teachers, many people, many parents. The challenges that we have with physical activity and children is that we always try to bring winning or games or accomplishing, being on the honor list or being a quarterback. But the reality is none of that really matters. What really matters is that we need to let our children know that physical activity is like eating. It's like drinking. It's like talking to your friends on the phone. It's like doing the things that you enjoy doing outside. Physical activity is part of your life, part of your daily life, whether it's dancing, running, walking, it can't be video games. It has to be something that involves what? Muscle. Muscle have to be involved in the process. Well, that's the birth of the 5-50-50. And this actually map was taken directly from the map that we did on our first event in 2018, of which I ran all 5Ks in all 50 states. Trust me, I went from one state to the other, to the other, to the other. And I did the same thing in 2019, but because of COVID, we end up now doing more a combination of virtual and in-person events. But what I want to do is I want to share with you a 1.5-minute video of my mission and how my mission was translated through my foundation. This was the trailer for the film that I produced from the first and second year of the 550/50. The full film is available on YouTube, and I believe it's available on Netflix as well. And I would love for you to watch it. We have a short version, which is 37 minutes, and we have a 112 minutes version. But you can see the whole story. I'm going back to my presentation here to get to the last slide. And my last slide is pretty straightforward, to say thank you for listening to me and giving me the opportunity to share my story. And what I would say to you is that please keep moving. If you're not moving, start moving. Your life will forever change in a better way. I really appreciate you listening to me. And if you have any questions, please let me know.